The station was nearly empty, wrapped in the dull, yellow glow of flickering lights and the quiet echo of footsteps that no longer came. The last announcement had already played, warning anyone left behind that the doors would soon close. That was when he noticed her. She was sleeping on a hard wooden bench, curled in on herself as if trying to disappear. Her coat was too thin for the cold night, and her hands were tucked tightly under her arms. A small bag rested against her chest, held like something precious, like the last thing the world hadn't taken from her. He slowed his steps, telling himself not to stare, not to interfere. People slept in stations all the time. Everyone had their own problems. Still, his feet stopped without asking his permission. There was a stillness about her that didn't feel peaceful. It felt tired, defeated. He wondered how long she had been there. How many people had walked past without seeing her at all? When she shifted slightly, her eyes opened, sharp with fear before she even fully woke. She sat up quickly, ready to defend herself, her grip tightening on her bag. He lifted his hands a little, careful with his movements. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to scare you." She didn't answer. Her eyes searched his face, not for kindness but for danger. He felt the weight of that look. It carried stories he didn't know, pain he couldn't imagine. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. He glanced around the empty platform, then back at her. "The station closes soon," he said. "Security won't let you stay." She looked away, jaw tightening, as if she already knew that. He hesitated, feeling foolish, knowing how easily words could be misunderstood. Finally he spoke again, slower this time. "I live nearby. It's nothing special, but it's warm. If you want, you can come home with me, just to rest. No expectations." Her head snapped back toward him. Suspicion flashed across her face, followed by something softer, confusion, maybe even hope, though she tried hard to hide it. She studied him like someone reading fine print, searching for lies. The hum of distant traffic filled the space between them. After a long moment, she stood, keeping her distance. "Just for tonight," she said quietly, her voice worn but steady. "If it feels wrong, I leave." He nodded immediately. "That's fair." As they walked out of the station together, neither of them knew it yet, but one simple sentence had already begun to change everything. The walk to his apartment was slow and cautious, each step measured as if either of them might turn back at any moment. The city felt different at night, quieter but heavier, filled with shadows that stretched across the sidewalks. She stayed a few steps behind him, close enough to follow, far enough to escape if she needed to. He noticed, but said nothing, pretending not to see the fear that still lived in her posture. When they reached the building, he unlocked the door and stepped aside, letting her enter first. The apartment was small but clean, warmed by a humming heater and the faint smell of coffee. It didn't feel like a place meant to impress anyone. It felt lived in. He pointed down the hallway. "Bathroom's there," he said gently. "You can lock the door. Towels are clean." Then he gestured to the couch. "You can sleep here. I'll be in the other room." She nodded, surprised by how easily he gave her space. Inside the bathroom, she stared at her reflection, barely recognizing herself. Dark circles framed her eyes, and her hair was tangled from days of restless nights. She washed her face slowly, as if trying to wash away more than dirt. When she returned, a folded blanket and a pillow waited on the couch. Placed carefully, respectfully, they sat at opposite ends of the room, silence hanging between them. He poured her a cup of tea and slid it across the table. "It helps with the cold," he said. She wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the warmth sink in. After a while, she spoke, not with a full story, just broken pieces. A job that vanished without warning. A landlord who stopped waiting for rent. A phone that rang less and less until it didn't ring at all. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer solutions. He just listened, and somehow that made it easier to breathe. When her words ran out, exhaustion took over. She lay down, still tense, but the quiet of the room slowly softened her fear. Later, as she slept, he sat awake in the other room, staring at the ceiling. He wondered why he had spoken to her at the station, why he had taken a risk he usually avoided. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was guilt. Or maybe deep down, he believed that sometimes doing nothing was worse than doing the wrong thing. Morning arrived quietly, filtered through pale curtains, and the distant sound of traffic waking up. She opened her eyes slowly, confused for a moment by the warmth around her. Then memory returned, the station, the invitation, the small apartment. Her body tensed out of habit, but the fear didn't rush in the way she expected. The room felt calm, untouched, as if the night had passed without asking anything from her. She sat up carefully, listening. From the kitchen came the soft clink of a spoon against a cup, and the low whistle of a kettle. The smell of tea drifted through the air. When he noticed her standing in the doorway, he smiled briefly. Not too much, not too little. "Good morning," he said. "I wasn't sure how you take your tea, so I made it plain." She wrapped her hands around the warm cup when he handed it to her. "Thank you," she replied, surprised at how normal her voice sounded. They sat at the small table, sunlight stretching across the floor between them. She expected questions, where she was going, what she planned to do, but none came. Instead, he asked something simple. "Did you sleep okay?" No one had asked her that in weeks. She nodded. "Better than I have in a long time." After breakfast, he told her she didn't have to rush. The words settled into her chest slowly, like something fragile being placed there. Later, they stepped outside together. The city felt different in daylight, less threatening, more forgiving. They walked without a destination, passing shops opening their doors and people beginning their routines. She felt invisible in a different way now, not erased, but free. On a park bench, she spoke again, more than before. Not everything, but enough. She talked about the fear of sleeping with one eye open, about how pride slowly disappears when survival takes over. He listened, hands folded, eyes steady, never once making her feel small. As the afternoon faded, doubt crept back into her thoughts. She wasn't used to kindness that didn't come with conditions. "I don't want to overstay," she said quietly. He shook his head. "You're not trapped here," he said. "And you're not a burden. Stay as long as you need to find your footing." That night, as she lay on the couch again, staring at the ceiling, something shifted inside her. The world outside was still uncertain, still hard. But for the first time in a long while, tomorrow didn't feel like an enemy. Time moved differently after that. What began as one night slowly unfolded into days, and then into weeks, each one stitching a little more stability into her life. She started waking up earlier, not out of fear but purpose. Mornings became quiet rituals, tea shared at the table, brief conversations, comfortable silences that no longer felt heavy. He never asked her to explain herself, and she never felt the need to defend her presence. That alone gave her space to heal. She found temporary work at a small cafe not far from the apartment. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough to remind her that she was capable, that her hands could still build something instead of just holding on. Every evening she returned tired but proud, and he noticed the change in her posture, the way her shoulders slowly stopped curling inward. He encouraged her without guiding her, helping only when asked, letting her grow at her own pace. There were difficult moments too. Some nights she woke from dreams she couldn't fully remember, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't explain. He never pushed for details. Sometimes he simply sat in the next room, present, steady, reminding her that she wasn't alone without saying the words out loud. Trust grew quietly, like a light slowly brightening, rather than suddenly switching on. One evening, she came home holding a folded paper in her hand. It was an offer for a more permanent job. She laughed, then cried, overwhelmed by how close she had come to losing everything. He smiled, genuinely happy, knowing this moment belonged to her, not to him. A few days later, she packed her bag again, this time carefully, thoughtfully. Standing at the door, she took a long breath. "That night at the station," she said, "you gave me more than shelter. You reminded me I wasn't invisible." He shook his head gently. "You found your way back yourself," he replied. She stepped outside, no longer running from the world, but ready to face it. As the door closed behind her, he stood quietly, aware that kindness doesn't always mean holding on. Sometimes it means opening a door and letting someone walk through it stronger than before.